Hello, this is John Milburn for Laws 11057. This is Introduction to Law, and this is week number 3. We've got some catching up to do. We've overcome some technical difficulties. I hope that everyone is now well and truly advanced in their first assessment piece. I must confess I haven't looked on UCrew since this morning, but if there are any questions that you wish to raise, either raise them through UCrew, or better still, even just raise them right now while we're in this open session. So we've got the first assignment coming up very soon, and it's a pretty simple assessment in the sense that all I'm really asking you to do is to set up your portfolio. You will have some questions about how to populate that portfolio. I fully understand that. I'm not looking for you to breach any confidence with employers or anything of that nature. What we're attempting to do is give you something that you can use throughout your university studies, and also something you can take with you. So it's courtesy of Google, and we're very appreciative of the support that we're getting in that regard. If there are any questions about the portfolio, please ask now or through UCrew ideally. The reason I encourage people, in fact almost direct people to ask through UCrew, a couple of reasons. It might be obvious, but the first is that if I provide a response, then I'd like everyone to have the benefit of that, so that there's not a suggestion that I'm, in a sense, colluding with one or two or group. So everybody gets to share information. Really very important is this aspect, that I am constantly amazed at the quality of the communications between students, and by initiating a question, by providing a response to your colleagues, you are creating a professional identity, and you're creating links that will last you through your university studies and beyond that as well. So I'm looking to develop that team approach. I know I mentioned that last week, but I think it's worthy of mentioning again. Okay, yes, please.
I just still can't access the cqulaw.net for some reason. I don't know if I'm I'm an idiot, or it's just something's wrong, or
I'm sure you are not. All right. Now, has anyone got any assistance they can provide?
I'm having the same problem.
We've got a few people having the same problem.
I just created mine in the Word document, and I wrote down my email address, like grace.mccauley@cqulaw.net, but it came up as a URL, like new and underline.
So it's your first name and last name, isn't it?
Yeah, it says that in the video, I'm pretty sure.
But that's what I'm doing. It's still not working, and it's the Google.
No, I don't think the system's up yet, because I typed in whatever the thing is, the website is to go to, and it wasn't opening. Sorry, it wasn't responding to the page, so I'm not really sure. But weren't we waiting on Steve?
You're going on. Are we on the same page? Which page are you going on?
cqlaw.net.
Yes.
Like www.cqlaw.net, and then I think you're supposed to log in with your email through that. Is that right?
I think so. I think it's just your first name, last name at cq. I don't know.
Well, I can't get to the place where you enter your email address that we've been given. I can't get to that place.
But it's just not processing. It's just not working.
Yeah, I had the same problem last week, and from what I understood is we were waiting for, is it Steve?
I think so, Steve. Yeah, that was
Scott.
Yes, Scott.
My bad.
And I don't think he's fixed it yet. So I have a question for you, John. Are we going to be marked down if we don't have that side of the assignment ready, because we haven't been given access?
No, I understand. If you can't do it, you can't do it. So I can't possibly mark you down. But what I did was receive a note from Professor Beattie this week, indicating that everything seemed to be okay from his end. He's back from leave later this week, so I've been dealing with him while he's on holidays. So my expectation was that people would say, yes, it's up and running now, but that's clearly not the case. Before I go back to him, has anyone had any success beyond what we've discussed so far?
Yeah, who's actually logged on?
Probably no one by the sound of it.
No, people are saying that theirs has worked and they logged on through Google accounts. So if you just go to like, is it Gmail, like Google, and if you have another Gmail account, pardon?
I've even tried there. Like I've tried even in the Google site, like normal Google. Doesn't work there either. On my phone, on my laptop, on the desktop, everywhere.
I'll try it now. I'll try it now and tell you if mine works.
Thanks, Grace. While you're doing that, Sharon, you've had a bit of success?
I did mine through the Google Drive and used my CQU email address. So if you just go onto Google and find the Google Drive and set up your account via your Central Queensland email.
Thank you, Sharon. Did people catch that? Appreciate that. Lachlan, I understand you've had a bit of success.
Is the microphone working? Yeah. Yeah, I just did the same. I went onto my CQU mail address and then I went to add account and then I added my CQUlaw.net account through that way and it seemed to work.
Thank you, Lachlan. As I recall, I don't have uCrew up at the moment, but did I see that someone had put some instruction or some notes about what they did that was successful? Was that you, Sharon, or Lachlan?
No, I don't think it was me.
Okay.
No, it wasn't me either.
Right. Could I ask either or both of you to volunteer some assistance by adding a contribution on uCrew about the steps that you took?
Excuse me, Lachlan, did you use a password for that or did you just type it in?
Yeah, it says on the instructions, the initial password you have to use is ACE acrony or ACE.
ACE Attorney.
Oh, yeah, ACE Attorney, there it is.
And the both A's are capitals. So it's capital ACE, capital ATTORNEY. And I just logged on and mine worked. So you go to the website accounts.google.com and you add an account if you already use Gmail or like a Google account. So you have to add a new account and then, type in the first name dot last name at CQUlaw.net and then ACE Attorney as a password, and straight away it'll come up to give for you to enter a new password.
Thank you.
That's as far as I've got. Thanks.
Mine just worked as well, and now that I've logged in, I actually don't know where I'm meant to go to next. It just pops up my account, control, protect, and secure your account all in one place. And I can't see any sort of email or anything.
At least you've got that far. Mine's still not logging on.
And are you trying that now? I guess you still not happening?
So yeah, like it's let me log in now, John, but I don't know what I do once I get into this email.
Okay. So, Linda, it looks like you've had some success. You went to Google Accounts. This is what I think we heard from Lachlan and Sharon. Typed in email, your first name dot second name at cqulaw.net. Then cap attorney, one word, as password, and it worked. And you had to change your password straight away when you logged on. Okay. That looks like the initial success. So while, now is it Amy, while you're checking that, can I ask those of you who had some success, Sharon, Lachlan, Linda, Grace, I think you're there now as well. What have you done once you've got onto that site? What's the next step where Dakota is stuck?
Dakota, on the top right-hand side, it's got like a grid with 9 dots, and then it's got a bell, and mine's got an S for Sharon. If you click on that grid, you'll get, it'll come up and it's got my account, search, mail, calendar. You want the drive, which is the middle one. And you go on, click on that, and it'll bring you, and you can set up your portfolio and everything.
That's great. Thank you, Sharon. Did you catch that, Dakota?
I actually have a program at work called Snagit, so I will do you some step-by-step instructions with the screen prints. So if you give me till tomorrow, I'll step everyone through via that way.
Oh, how great is that? Thank you very much. Sharon and Lachlan in particular, Linda also. We may have to run a special session where we get you to be our guest hosts of that session. How does that sound? Would you be willing to do that for us?
Yep, that's fine.
Great. All right. So once we've got that up and running, we might have even a couple of sessions. I can book it in and just make it known that we'll have one or more of our champions online to assist people in a step-by-step basis. Hopefully we'll get there. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'm still in catch-up mode, as you know, from the bar practice course, so I'm catching up as well. And I'm going to go through this process also, so I'll see where the snags are and where the benefits are. What I can say in general terms is this: thank you very much for your patience in bearing with it. Thanks those of you that are leading the way, and I really appreciate your efforts in helping others as well. For those that are struggling, we will get there. I'm sure there's a solution to it, so be patient. And what we're trying to do in the university is differentiate ourselves. This is an online learning experience. We are, I guess, trying to promote ourselves as being, in a way, a little different in terms of the use of technology. And having the online forum gives us that great advantage. We have to do it. We have to learn the technology. So every step that you come across and you overcome means that you are now advancing your skills in a very meaningful way. So try and remain I guess receptive to that issue as well. So thank you very much. There's a few more instructions coming through. So Dakota said, how do we create the portfolio? Sharon said, new, then folder, create a folder and cut and paste the template in there. Thank you very much. All right, does anyone wish to have any further questions, make any comments or provide suggestions on that portfolio? And I really appreciate your help, everyone.
John, I can't remember who asked the question, but one of the girls wanted to know whether, because there is an example on the website, on if we do the, actually no, it's the next subject. It's a statutory, sorry. Forget that one.
That's all right. Some of us are staying on for that one as well. Okay. Thank you. All right. Yes, Grace?
Just quickly, I'm just in the mail part of our Google account, and I wanted to set up a forwarding address. It says if you go into settings, you can set up a forwarding address in a recovery account, but I don't really know how to find that. I can't really see it in settings. Has anyone done that?
If you go back up to the grid on the top right-hand side, see where it's got the little bell on the grid there? Click on the grid and it'll have my account. That's where you set all your account preferences. Got it?
Thanks.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
cool. I'll
Got
figure
that one,
it out.
Grace?
Thanks.
Okay. We'll get there. All right. Thank you very much. And Lachlan, just interested to know, when we finish our portfolio, how do we go about submitting the task? Do we just supply you with the URL? generally speaking, any task that you have for assessment is something that should be uploaded through Moodle. So when you go to, when you completed the task, if you have a URL, then pop that in a Word document or some form of link, submit that Word document, and I'll then access it through there, access the link as well. Does that answer your question, Lachlan? Lachlan says, yep, that's good. Okay, thank you. Any further comments, questions?
So when we're actually uploading the portfolio, we have our Word one, we go through Moodle and we put it on in there, and we just use our URL on the Word document. We don't have to worry about uploading the this new email into Moodle. No.
If I can access your material via the URL, that's all I need to do. And
Okay.
once someone has completed the task and uploaded into Moodle using that technique, I'll probably go in and test it. And if there's a problem, I'll let you know collectively.
Okay.
I should mention, sorry, yep.
I was just going to say, this assignment's due next week, 5 p.m. Is it? So this will be our last online.
No, it's at 11:45.
11:45.
On Thursday, isn't it?
On Thursday.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I must be looking at a different one.
No, that's right.
11:45. So, if we're having problems, we can talk to you about it then, I guess.
Absolutely. Yep, we can talk it through this same session next week. So with pretty much all of my assessment is, apart from maybe the take-home paper, but in-term assessment is always due at 11:45 p.m. on a Thursday. And what I do is deduct 5% per day if you're late. And I think I mentioned this last week. There's a cut-off on the Saturday week. So you've got 9 days to submit the work, even though there's a deduction each day. At the end of at 11:45 p.m. on the Saturday week, 9 days after the assessment is due, I cut off the assessment, no further assessment. And the reason I do that is it gives me the Sunday and possibly the Monday to mark the material and get the results back to you. I always insist on trying to get some results back to you as soon as I can so that you can use that information for the next assessment. It's not much good getting some feedback on the first assessment after you've already submitted your second. So I try and space it and time it to that effect. So thank you for your cooperation in that regard. And that's why, I know it's tough, but one way or the other, we can't extend the dates. So if we can't get the links organised, we'll do a workaround, but I reckon we'll get there. What do you think, Amy? We'll get there? Okay. And
I have a question. Do we just send our URL for the portfolio in a Word document and submit through Moodle?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
and
the way.
Have our name and student number in the Word document.
Yep. That's it.
Nice.
If I can get to your document that way, that's all I need. And it'll save you having to upload it through Moodle. It's very slow, tedious uploading it through Moodle. Is there a question there? Okay. All right. Well, we might move on. Textbooks. This is a great text. I'm sure you're all reading it diligently, and I like to see you read ahead of time. This is generally prescribed. I haven't prescribed it this term, I don't believe, but it's well worth the investment, and that's the Guide to Legal Research. That's the 3rd edition, and that's by Sanderson and Kelly from Thomson Reuters. So it's kind of a step-by-step into legal research. That's a good one to get as well. If you want to read a bit more broadly than that, from LexisNexis, we have another text by Rachel Field in conjunction with Duffy and Huggins, and it's Lawyering and Positive Professional Identities. So that's LexisNexis, and that's a great text as well. You don't have to get that.
put it up a little bit, like just a little
Yeah.
screenshot? Thank you.
Got that one? And finally, we have, or two more, sorry. The final textbook for Introduction to Law is this one, which is the Australian Legal System. And that's a really good textbook. Goes into some history. And that's a publication by Thomson Reuters. And that's by Russell Hinchy. So that's worth a look. You might be able to access these through libraries or buy them if you wish. And if you want a general text that'll sort of give you some guidance all the way through, it's not in paper form anymore, I don't believe, but the Queensland Law Handbook through Caxton Legal Centre. It's a great publication for general information about practical guide to the law. So that's the 11th edition. I think we might be up to 13 or something now in an online version, but it's quite a meaty text, and it deals in sufficient detail in a number of legal areas, probably 30 different legal areas, to give you a good grounding. So are there any questions about textbooks? Has anyone got any other suggestions?
Maybe the one that is about citations, legal citation.
Yeah, so there's the Australian Guide to Legal Citations, which and there's a link to that on Moodle. So definitely have a look at that. And at the back, it provides you with a guide as to what you can do in brief, because it's a difficult one. So I think there was a question about the third book, and I think the third book that I showed was this one here. Is that the one that we're after? Which is by Field, Lawyers and Positive Professional Identities, by Field, Duffy and Huggins. Is that the one we're after? Okay, got a screenshot of that one. Good text. Okay. When you read through the material in The New Lawyer, you'll see that there are different practice areas. We call it the Priestley 11, is an area for you to consider. It's on page 25. And while you're looking at that, I want you to think about what it is that you wish to achieve with your law degree. Now, many of you won't practice. I am making this course as if you are going into practice. And if you're serious about it, and if you've got some time, I'm going to make a suggestion here to supplement your studies, and that is try to think about how you would deal with these cases as you come across them in practice, and to get some real practice and some real feel for the law, why not contact your community legal centre and see if you can volunteer, or at least go along and be with a practitioner when they do provide legal advice. So I gave you the Caxton Street Legal Service. That's pretty much where it all started, but there are legal centres throughout Queensland and Australia now, and it's worth making contact. So in the area where I am, I co-established it years ago with Magistrate Guttridge, as he is now, and and I've always had people come along with me. Not that I've volunteered for a couple of years now, but I've always had law students come with me when I do that. So you might be in a position to have someone provide you with some training on the go. The other thing is mock trials. I've hosted mock trials in this area on a regular basis. And if you can't get to a mock trial, what's that, sorry?
Is that mooting?
Mooting,
that mooting?
yes. Yeah, mock trial, mooting.
Oh, cool. Do they have them in Rockhampton and Gladstone?
Look, they might. Rockhampton and would be probably the more likely of the two venues, but that might be something that someone like Wayne Jones in Rockhampton might be able to organise. The other thing is you can always go to court and just sit in the back of the court. Make yourself known as a law student to the lawyers there, and they might introduce you to the magistrate or the judge, and that'd be great to continue on. As a barrister, I would like to do mostly criminal law, but I'm very keen to do civil law as well as the mediation work that I do. In terms of your legal career, just remember it starts early on. So right now you're looking at being lawyers in the making. So what you do in terms of your studies will reflect positively on your practice as a lawyer, hopefully not negatively. One of the case that I often set for the first assessment, we don't have that regime now, is a case of Humsey Hancock. So if you want to have a look at something that's of interest, have a look at that case, re Humsey Hancock. I don't have the citation handy, I'm sorry. Now, has anyone been able to successfully source law in the sense of statutes and case law? And if so, do you have any tips for us on how you've gone about doing it? Firstly, what's a statute?
Legislation, a piece of legislation, an act, or something.
That's it. Yep. So, and legislation is, there's primary and secondary legislation or delegated legislation. But when we talk about acts, we're generally talking about primary legislation, acts of Parliament. So how do you find an act of Parliament if you want to source one? Who's got some ideas?
Go onto the parliamentary website.
Yes.
I look on the database. Is that?
Yep. Do you mean the CQU database?
No. The legal database, the government, federal government database.
Okay. Yep. So Parliamentary Council, legal federal government database.
Yeah.
Any other sources that people have found? All right. What I plan to do is just share the screen now and show you a couple of sites. I'll start with ComLaw. This is for Commonwealth legislation, and it is worth checking all these sites out because you need to be in a position to access this material. And of course, I'm not having much success straight away.
Oh, I was going to say, we've been finding some in statutory interpretation as well.
Yeah.
Locating some.
So those of you that are doing statutory interpretation, you've got that as well. Look, I'm just going to share the screen. If things are going well, you should now see what's called the Federal Register of Legislation. And you'll see there we have, at a Commonwealth level, the acts in force, various instruments, gazettes, legislative instruments, bills, and information. And I'm not going to do any more than just introduce that site to you, but encourage you to go exploring and find your way around that site. It's pretty user-friendly now. It's much better, in my view, than it used to be. And I think you'll find that's a very useful thing. So it's just legislation.gov.au. It's as simple as that. It's authorised commentary. It's up-to-date legislation. And it will show you recent changes in the law. There's the What's New section. There's certainly information there about how to use ComLaw. And there's commentary in relation to what lawmakers essentially need to do. There's the Gazette information, announcement information about bills. So it's a good site to look at.
Sorry, what are gazettes? I don't know if I've heard that before.
Yeah, gazettes are announcements, for want of a better term. And it's quite common in legal matters, for matters to be advertised, perhaps in newspapers, but also to be advertised in the Gazette. Whether people actually go and read the Gazette's a different thing, but that's the intention of it.
Okay, cool. So it's different to a memorandum?
Yes, it is. Yep.
And is a bill an act that's in drafting stages or legislation that's in drafting stages?
Yeah, so a bill is something that is in a form that might ultimately become an act if it's passed.
Oh, okay.
So once the bill's introduced into Parliament, it then goes through a process which might ultimately result in it becoming an act.
I haven't read the chapter in the textbook this week. I only read the study guide, so.
Okay. All right, let's have a look at the next website. This is the Office of Parliamentary Counsel. I think someone mentioned it before. So the first one was for federal legislation. This one is for state. And again, this is the authorised commentary. It provides up-to-date current legislation, acts as passed, subordinate legislation, bills, repealed legislation. So there's a lot of information there, which is all authorised through the, so that's legislation.qld.gov.au. A very popular site, one that you'll use a lot and certainly hear about often, is Osterley, which is the Australian Legal Information Institute. There are versions of this all around the world, and it's a free service, but the authors, you are invited to contribute, so people sometimes contribute over there. It's unauthorised, but it's very popular. It does incorporate authorised reports. You'll see both Commonwealth and state legislation, as well as regulations and case law. There are a couple of facilities that you really want to know and learn about. One is lawsite. It's a search facility where you get to search for a particular case. So have a look at that. If you can see where my cursor is there, lawsite. Just play around with it at this stage. And the other one is noteup. Now, noteup is, we'll need to go into legislation to show you noteup, but it's a really good service. I'll just go into Queensland legislation. We'll have a look at, say, the Property Law Act. Internet's very slow. Property Law Act. And I'll select something that might have some case law. So you'll see I've gone to section 71 of the Property Law Act, and you'll see a thing called noteup. And if we press noteup, what it does is give us a list of cases that relates to that section. So it's an easy way to do some legal research and identify cases that have dealt with that particular section. Okay, so that's Osterley. The next one I want to show you is Barnett, and there's a really good feature with Barnett. So if you want to impress your lecturers with your up-to-date knowledge, then this is a great way to do it. Now I've done that twice, so I'll get rid of one. So here's Barnett Jade. This is unauthorised, but it is still very popular, and it does incorporate the authorised reports, research guide, has Commonwealth and state legislation, and daily updates through subscription. So that's the part that I want to show you, the subscription service, where you can sign up and you will then get emails, if that's what you choose, in the areas of practice that are of interest to you, sent to you each day. So here, for example, we have High Court decisions from the month of November, and if you subscribe to that service, then those decisions will come to you on the day. So it's a really good service, and it's a very good website. Jade is a great one. So they're basic websites that I think you should consider and get to know those websites. They're really important. Apart from that, courts' websites are great. And to follow on from what we were talking about earlier tonight, this is an online course, so we have to be really good at online research, and That's all part of it. Okay, are there any questions in relation to any of those things? Okay, well, I'll move on. When you're reading the new lawyer, the second chapter, have a look at Indigenous Australians, consider the issues to do with terra nullius, identify the importance of WIC decision and native title determinations. I'm not going to go into that in any more depth tonight, but does anyone have any questions about Mabo, WIC, native title, terra nullius?
I'm not sure what Mabo was. I kind of must have missed that, but I did absorb what terra nullius is.
Okay, so terra nullius was where it was originally declared that Australia was unoccupied, and therefore British sovereignty could immediately take effect for all of Australia. But Mabo was a decision of the High Court in, from memory, 92, which exposed that principle as a fiction for what it was. And of course, Australia was never unoccupied. And the High Court in that Mabo decision made that very clear, which then led to, that was Mabo, the citation for Mabo is 1992 175 CLR 1. So 1992 175 CLR 1, and that's where the High Court considered the application made by Eddie Mabo on behalf of the Miriam people to claim that it had continuously occupied islands in the Torres Strait, and therefore it was able to continue with that occupation, if I can use that term. Following that decision, we had the Native Title Act that was enacted in 93 by the federal government, which essentially provided the High Court, which essentially recognised what the High Court had done and made that parliamentary law. So Mabo was around the wrong way in this sense, that usually new law is created, substantive new law is created through Act of Parliament, and the courts then consider that and interpret it. Here we had judicial activism to the point where the High Court essentially created this new law and got rid of terra nullius, and then Parliament followed by enacting legislation to provide certainty to that. The WIC decision expanded on that as well.
So because terra nullius was sort of established under the rule that because Aboriginals didn't have private property, so they technically didn't own the land, which is ridiculous. But did that mean that because I've heard that people said they classed Aboriginals as flora and fauna when they first got here, like not even as humans. I don't know if that's true, but
yeah, I wouldn't like to say
not able to own property. Were they not able to own property until Mabo came in to play? Or?
No, they were able to own property, but what Mabo did was essentially establish a recognition of the ownership of the islands through that native title. And the Queensland government tried to clarify that through legislation, but it was ultimately the federal government, by enacting the Native Title Act, which was passed the following year, that provided some real certainty to that position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. All right. Look, one other thing I want you to just to think about is law and equity. We talked about this briefly last week. So when we talk about common law, you might get a bit confused because we use it in two senses. Common law is judge-made law. That's one way of looking at it. And the other way is common law is to be contrasted to equity. And we talked about that last week, where historically there were two courts and they merged eventually through the Judicature Act of about 1873. So there's still that common law and equity, and now we really talk about all of that in a sense as being common law, as judge-made law and precedent, stare decisis, the doctrine of precedent, etc. But we identified last week there are a few equitable principles that still apply. I think someone said come into court with clean hands. So in the text, you'll see some examples of equitable doctrines and how they work. Just on equity, sometimes we have equitable remedies, and one equitable remedy is from specific performance. An equitable remedy of specific performance means that we are asking the court to specifically order a party to a contract to perform their obligations under that contract. So that's specific performance. It's equitable. The common law counterpart to that, there's no real counterpart, but the common law alternative is damages, money compensation. So specific performance is really an important remedy to consider in certain contexts. One example is if you're a buyer of land and the seller refuses to complete the contract as the seller is required to do, then an option for you as the buyer is to go to court and ask for an order for specific performance. And that is essentially saying to the court, please order the seller to transfer this land to me. I'll still pay the price, but I want that land. And that's important because land is unique. All right, now we've got a few more minutes. I talked to you last week, I think, in general terms about my requirements for assignment work as opposed to others. If you haven't already looked at my sample document, then please do so. I'm just going to ask generally, I'll just go to gallery view for a moment. Has everyone had a look at my sample document? No? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Okay, it's at the bottom of the materials on Moodle. I think at the end of the landing page, it might be between the landing page and week 1. So it's a Word document, worth having a little look at that as well. Any questions about that?
What's that a sample of, sorry?
I just call it my sample document, and it's a sample of how you might set out your work and provide some guidance on things like footnote referencing, the style of writing that I think is appropriate, and it incorporates all that. So the commentary is meant to both show you a layout, but also the content is to provide you with information. You'll see that in that document, I encourage people to use plain English drafting and to communicate in a way that is as simple as possible. What you've noticed is that there's no legalese in that document. Legalese is the sort of waffle that we used to go on with. Even when I started in law, we would draft documents, hereinafter referred to as, hereinbefore. We'd talk about something, on the 5th instant or the 5th ultimo, these are dates that we would talk about. Thus, there and under, all those sorts of nonsense words that don't mean anything. We got rid of all that in the space of time that I've been practicing. So now we just use plain language. Okay. So have a look at that sample document, and it's really important you do that, I think, particularly with me, because in that I say things like, if you're going to quote legislation, then please put it in italics. It's a really simple thing, but if you don't, you look amateurish. Does that make sense? So you want to look the part when it comes to preparing legal documents, and they're just simple things, so that when I as an assessor or somebody else looks at it, they say, oh, okay, this person knows what they're doing immediately. It inspires confidence, so that's what you want to do.
Cool. So just notice the format and everything. I just have a question with the equity and common law remedies. So legislation obviously overrides common law in most circumstances these days. Is that right? Or is that?
It does always, yes.
Oh, always.
Yeah, it does now, but you're right. It was not always that way, but it does now. Yep.
Yeah. So but if someone needs a remedy, that's when they go back to common law or equity.
No, not necessarily. Sometimes the remedy. Yeah, so sometimes the remedy is built into the statute. So the statute might provide that this is the remedy that's available to you. Other times, yeah, you're right, in interpreting the legislation or enforcing rights under the legislation, you may look to common law remedies. So bear in mind, of course, the statutes can't deal with everything. So there's still a lot of gaps, even though we might have detailed legislation. There's still a lot of things to argue about, and that's where the courts and the common law principles come into play. Often, what's in the legislation reflects what was previously the common law, if that makes sense.
All right.
No,
so is equity actually a form of law all on its own?
It used to be.
Really?
Now it's incorporated. So, you know, we're talking nearly, say, 150 years ago now, people would apply in the courts of equity for certain things, or they'd apply in the common law courts. So if you look at, and again, even in the 70s when I was first studying law, most of our work was not so much statutes. Most of our time we were spending reading English cases, and we'd read cases from the courts of equity, chancery, exchequer, things of that nature, as opposed to the common law courts. So much of that has changed.
Thank you.
It's easier now, believe it or not.
I can imagine.
Great questions. Thank you. Okay. Look, I might wrap it up soon. I'm just going to show you one more thing. I'll share the screen, and I'm going to ask you to think about looking at the Parliamentary Education Office website. If I can share this screen, I'll do that now. And you should now see my screen. So it's peo.gov.au, and it's a whole lot of interesting and informative fact sheets, particularly about separation of powers. You've really got to know that. You've got to know your separation of powers. So that's an easy way to identify that information. All right, so peo.gov.au. Excellent. All right, I think we might wrap it up for this evening. Those of you that are involved in statutory interpretation, we'll see you in about 10 minutes. I'll stop this broadcast so that I can start the process of recording it and uploading it, and then I'll be back online in about 10 minutes. Before I go, any final questions, comments? And a big thank you to our champions for the first assessment, Sharon and Lachlan and Linda. And if I've forgotten someone else, I'm sorry, but thank you. And we will ask you to participate in some workshops at various times if you can, and we'd really appreciate that. So thank you from all of us, especially from me. Right, I'll end the meeting now, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.